Joins us on the Terry Gilberg Show. Senator, so nice to talk with you this morning. Hello. Hello, Senator. Hello.
Hello, Terry. How are you?
Nice to talk with. Yes, I can, Senator. Nice to talk with you. Because we have a limited time, I want to get right to it with you, Senator McCain. My first question is whether or not there is an official CBO report out this morning.
Well, there's a CBO estimate, but the fact is that it's the old line we used to have about computers, garbage in, garbage out, and the assumptions are not only weak, they're fundamentally false. They assume cuts in Medicare, for example, of $500 million. Nobody believes that's going to happen.
Right.
They believe that the so-called doc fix, the reductions in physicians' payment are going to take place. We know that's not true. That's another $371 billion.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Terry, could I just mention, I just saw across the crawl, and I got to find out a little bit more about it. Caterpillar just announced that this healthcare bill would cost them $100 million.
Oh, goodness.
Okay?
Oh, goodness.
I just saw it, and you ought to check into it, too.
All right, we'll check into it for Monday.
The increases in taxes also will now be on unearned income. Anybody who has stocks, anybody who has a retirement fund, anybody who has, there will be a significant increase in taxes on that as well. And finally, could I remember, all these things. I'm about to go to the floor with some of my colleagues and talk more about it. But look, we're talking about 10 years of taxes and 6 years of benefits. The first 4 years, there's no benefits. There's just cuts and tax increases.
Right.
And why did they do that? So that you could get this garbage out from the Congressional Budget Office.
Right.
I respect the Congressional Budget Office. I don't respect the information they've been fed from which they arrive at these estimates.
That's right. And people need to know the distinction. Now, Senator, speaking of going to the floor, yesterday there was a GOP Senate and House member so-called standoff. What was that all about?
I spoke to him. I said I was reminded of the words of my naval hero. As you know, I have a little Navy background.
Yes.
John Paul Jones, in the middle of a fight when it looked like maybe he was losing, he said, "I have just begun to fight." And we have just begun to fight, Terry. We have got to right now call out all our troops. We got to put all the pressure on that we possibly can. And if it passes in the House, and I'm not saying it's gonna. Okay, the liberal media is trying to feed the the momentum here, but look, we're not going to quit. And we're going to fight in the Senate on the so-called reconciliation. We're going to fight day and night on that. And then if the worst thing happens, I hate to even bring this up, we ought to immediately launch a national repeal campaign.
And major lawsuits, too, Senator.
Absolutely. It is unconstitutional.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There will be an uprising, I think the likes of which we haven't seen in a very long time, maybe even as far back as Roe v. Wade or something like that. Now, do you think...
I'm proud of the governor of Arizona and the speaker and the majority leader who stood up yesterday and said the increased Medicaid costs would bankrupt the state of Arizona.
Yes, and we've also been talking on the program earlier today as to whether or not the state of Arizona, Governor Jan Brewer, may join in a rising movement of other governors across the land on suing the federal government for the demands of the individual mandate.
Yes, and we need to have the constitutional amendment passed as well as law passed through the legislature, which other states, Idaho just did it in the last couple of days.
That's right.
We will not be bound. The states will not be bound by mandates from the federal government that everybody have health insurance. That is a clear unconstitutional, in my view, and I'll be glad to test it in the courts. Some cynics listening maybe, but the fact is that I believe that it's unconstitutional, this kind of mandate, and there have been previous Supreme Court cases that give great credence to that.
Now, Senator, do you think it will pass via the vote? Because what I'm getting in my inbox, which is overflowing, is that Nancy Pelosi still is 4 shy. It's the holdout from the pro-life Bart Stupak group. She still needs 4. So first question is, do you think it will pass via a vote, the vote, or do you think it will go to a deem and scheme?
I don't know enough about it except that that they keep talking about demon scheme, which is why I think they may do it, but that way. But not being a vote counter, I don't know that, but I do know that the overwhelming majority of the American people oppose this. I do know that never in history has been a major reform passed that's not on a bipartisan basis. I know that this is full of assumptions that will never happen. You will never cut Medicare by $500 billion. And
right.
By the way, who is going to be targeted by this? One thing you can be sure of: the 330,000 citizens in Arizona who are enrollees in Medicare Advantage program.
That's right.
That have chosen that. Those 330,000 are at risk, while the 800,000 that the Florida Gatorade provision, which has not been taken out, are protected from cuts in Medicare Advantage. Right there alone is an argument about disparate effect on different states.
You're absolutely right, and that's why the lawsuits will abound. Where do you see, if it passes, Senator, through this as we're talking in the newsroom, the demon scheme, and this is the hell bill, if it passes that way, I say there will be major challenges all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Agree?
As I said, I think there is ample precedent. There was a line-item veto case before the United States Supreme Court. They declared it unconstitutional because both houses of Congress had not passed. It would have the effect of both houses of Congress not passing the exact same legislation. I think that court decision applies here.
What do you make, Senator, of Dennis Kucinich and the private plane ride all the way to Ohio and coming? What happened in the bowels of Air Force One? Our listeners need to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
Did you ever really believe that Dennis Kucinich was not going to vote with the president?
Oh, he plays the game,
Terry,
doesn't he? Of course, he plays the game. What happened, Senator, inside the bowels of Air Force One? Come on, do tell.
You'll have to. I tried to be in a position to find out. Could I mention again? We have 3 members of Congress in Arizona: Congressman Mitchell,
yes.
Congressman Kirkpatrick, Congresswoman Kirkpatrick, and Congresswoman Giffords.
Right.
That they need to be told how the people of Arizona feel on this issue.
I heard a bite from Senator Tom Coburn, and maybe you were a part of that, because it's my understanding it was the senator, his staff, plus 6 other, maybe 7 other senators and their staff members all coming together saying essentially, we will call you out. If you do any more bribes, if there's anything in reconciliation or in any appropriations down the road, we will call you out. Are you part of that group, Senator?
Yes, of course.
Okay, would you elaborate a little bit on that for us, please?
Well, we're going to identify people who, and by the way, we won't find out some of these in the future as far as the deals that are being made in House members, but they'll come out. That we are going to identify people, we're going to identify the deals, and we're going to be talking a lot about it. Could I also mention that this reconciliation is far from a deal that will fix anything. We have 51 Republican senators who we will oppose anything, no matter whether it favors us or not, because we think the reconciliation should not be used on an issue of this nature. So when they tell the House people that they'll, quote, fix this in reconciliation,
right.
We won't. We won't.
Senator McCain, is the reconciliation, speaking of which, is that language even drafted yet? Because, for example, the Bart Stupak crowd, they want to see that, and the clock is ticking. They keep asking for 72 hours just to see the language before they might flip. Is that even been drafted yet?
I don't think so, but I think the bigger point here is, Terry, I am pro-life. I'm proud of my pro-life position, but we're not going to vote for something that changes that, because the reconciliation process is, in our view, totally against the institution, violates the institution of the Senate, which, by the way, then Senator Barack Obama also said when we were considering this 51 votes on the confirmation of judges.
Mm-hmm.
My, how times change. Huh?
My, how times change. Did you happen to catch the Fox News anchor Brett Bayer's interview with the president, Senator?
Oh, yeah.
All right. The thing that just
didn't answer a good deal of his questions.
That's absolutely true, and he tried to take the wind out of Bayer's sail there, even though Bayer kept trying to politely get in on the president's sort of monologue there. But what really caught my eye in watching this was how the president nuanced on the fact, well, he says it's a fact, that the American people just want to vote and that they don't care how it's done. I just almost threw my stiletto heel into the television. I was so mad.
They're in for a big surprise. They're in for a big surprise. Americans
a big
are
surprise.
paying attention to this. They don't like the process. They are opposed to it. And by the way, I was faced with a somewhat similar situation when at Blair House, as you might remember, when I talked to the president about the sleazy sausage-making Chicago-style stuff they've done. Okay, and you remember what he said? Well, the campaign's over. That really has nothing to do with the campaign. It has everything to do with behind the scenes in Pelosi's office or Reid's office or in the White House, cutting deals for the unions, cutting deals for the individuals, cutting deals for the pharmaceutical companies. And who is it that pays the bill for all that? The American taxpayer.
That's right. That's right. We're down to about 45 seconds, Senator.
Okay. Keep up the good work.
Of this
Don't
interview.
Stop. Don't stop.
No, we're not going to stop. One quick question. What does it look like on the mall in Washington right now? The protesters are out in droves and growing.
It's looking good. Everybody that can, that's within earshot, call your friends that live nearby. Get down here. This is crunch time, and believe me, we have just begun to fight.
Thank you, Senator John
Paul Jones. Okay,
John Paul Jones. When the Titanic sinks, we're just going to still turn it around. Senator John McCain, thanks for being on the program with us. It's the Terry Gilberg Show. Thank you so much, Senator. We appreciate you. It's the Terry Gilberg Show. Get out there, fight the good fight. We are at a monumental fork in the road about health care. Stay on the fight all through Sunday.